My friends, gather around once more and let us contemplate a subject both subtle and powerful. How to leave a lasting impression without uttering a single word. It might seem paradoxical at first. Our culture so often emphasizes clever speech, witty remarks, powerful oratory. Yet every Stoic sage, every wise observer of human nature, recognizes that a presence can speak more loudly than an oration. Indeed, sometimes silence, composure, and the quiet expression of virtue can imprint upon the minds of those around us far more vividly than any well-crafted phrase. I have walked many paths in life, witnessing how men struggle to impress their peers, superiors, or loved ones with grand speeches or flamboyant gestures, not realizing that their bearing, their authenticity, and the atmosphere they radiate communicates volumes. In our Stoic reflections, we shall see how one may cultivate that forceful presence, one that lingers in memory, without even parting our lips. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Did you know only 15% of you watching are subscribed? If you find these insights valuable, join our community and tap the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. Let me begin with a personal reminiscence. In my younger days, I believed that to stand out in a crowd, I needed to be the loudest voice. I would make jokes, push my opinions forward, and strive to dominate conversations. Sometimes it worked. People laughed, or they looked at me. But as I matured, I realized that while I gained attention in the moment, I often left no deeper impression. Soon after my words subsided, I faded from their minds. Then I encountered a mentor, a quiet craftsman who rarely spoke unless directly addressed. Yet whenever he entered a room, people seemed to straighten their posture. They grew more attentive, more respectful. He was not imposing in stature, but he carried himself with an air of confidence and serenity, as though he was at peace with his own worth, unaffected by the need to clamor for recognition. Observing him, I discovered an alternative path, that of silent yet undeniable presence. From a Stoic standpoint, leaving a lasting impression without words begins with the notion that we communicate through our actions, our posture, our expressions, and the intangible force of our inner character. So let us examine the first principle that emerges from this, the cultivation of an aligned inner state, what we might call congruence. When your convictions, your moral sense, and your outward demeanor are in harmony, you exude a calm self-possession that others find memorable. You do not need to shout or posture, because your entire being quietly declares, "I know who I am, I know what I stand for." Stoicism teaches us to focus on the domain of our control, our judgments, our values, our decisions, and to accept the rest as it is. A man who has mastered this alignment radiates a quiet confidence that often surpasses any carefully scripted speech. Think of Epictetus, who was born a slave, yet became one of the most influential Stoic teachers. He did not have the freedom to command attention with wealth or rank. Instead, he embodied Stoic virtue so thoroughly that people sought him out, eager to learn from his calm presence. He did not need to brag about his wisdom. It was palpable in the measured, unhurried way he interacted with the world. When he spoke, yes, his words were incisive, but even his silences, the way he observed a situation with unwavering composure, left an imprint on those who encountered him. This illustrates that even in adversity, perhaps especially in adversity, a Stoic bearing can etch itself into the memories of others without a word. Another dimension of this unspoken impression is the notion of deliberate action. Humans often scatter their energies, rushing from one task to another in frantic haste. In so doing, they appear frenetic, uncertain, like leaves tossed by the wind. Someone who moves with deliberate slowness or measured pace, not out of laziness but from a sense of calm control, can be striking. Think of a craftsman who places each tool down with care, or a manager who reads a room before making decisions. Their quiet deliberation conveys thoughtfulness and self-mastery. This can make them stand out in a chaotic environment where everyone else seems restless. Stoicism fosters this deliberation because it teaches us to pause, to weigh impressions, to respond rather than react. That pause, that second or two of calm reflection, can prove more impactful than a dozen rushed words. People notice. They sense that you are not enslaved by hurry or social pressure. Let me share a small anecdote from my days working alongside a group of skilled artisans. One man, an older fellow, seldom said more than a few words each day, but his presence was remarkable. He would enter the workshop, greet everyone with a slight nod, and then set about his tasks. He never raised his voice, never engaged in gossip. Yet if a dispute arose among colleagues, or if confusion reigned about some technical matter, it was enough that he paused, looked up, and offered a single suggestion or demonstration. Instantly, the tension would settle. People trusted his mastery, his calm. They knew he was not driven by ego or the need to dominate conversation. Over time, I realized that his silence did not denote shyness or inability. It was a testament to the Stoic habit of speaking only when truly necessary. He left a lasting impression on all of us precisely by embodying steadiness and skill, not by regaling us with anecdotes or seeking the limelight. This exemplifies a second principle. Let your competence and measured conduct do the talking, so to speak. When people observe your consistent excellence, they recall it long after the talkative braggers have faded from memory. From a more formal Stoic perspective, there is also the practice of negative visualization, though not always in the sense we typically discuss. In the context of nonverbal presence, we might occasionally imagine ourselves entering a meeting or a social setting entirely silent. How would we want to stand, to greet others, to respond with facial expressions or gestures? By mentally rehearsing a calm, open posture, a slight but genuine smile, and a willingness to make eye contact, we prepare ourselves to exude warmth without clamor. If you are accustomed to filling silences with chatter or forcibly impressing people with your words, this mental exercise can be transformative. You realize that sometimes the best way to show you are attentive or empathetic is not to speak, but to truly listen, meeting the other person's gaze with a receptive, grounded demeanor. The Stoics taught that we cannot control how others will react to us, but we can control how we present ourselves. Practicing this silent presence cements the idea that we can generate an impression based on how we carry ourselves, not on how well we orchestrate conversation. And let us not neglect body language. Men often forget how heavily we communicate through posture, gestures, and micro-expressions. Stoicism, with its emphasis on equanimity, suggests that we maintain a posture that is upright, but not rigid, open, but not desperate. The chest, the shoulders, the tilt of the head, these small details can convey self-assurance or insecurity. If we fidget or slump, we project uncertainty. If we stand tall, not in arrogance but in composure, we speak volumes about our self-respect. Consider, for instance, an intense negotiation or a high-stakes business meeting. The Stoic approach would have you remain still, balanced, occasionally nodding to show attentiveness, while letting your face reflect calm concentration rather than fear or aggression. People sense when you are at ease in your own skin, and that sense can overshadow even the most eloquent competitor who flails or postures too eagerly. By controlling your body language, you shape the silent message: I am here, I am present, I am not at war with my own nerves. It follows that a Stoic approach to leaving a silent impression also demands emotional mastery. If anger, impatience, or vanity dominates your internal state, it will seep out in your micro-expressions: a flash of the eyes, a clenched jaw, a twitch of irritation. Conversely, if you have trained yourself to remain serene in the face of provocation, to weigh slight annoyances with rational acceptance, your face and bearing remain unruffled. Others might try to provoke you, expecting an outburst, but when you simply breathe, hold their gaze calmly, and let the moment pass, you demonstrate a formidable inner strength. This, too, is often more striking than any retort you could have delivered. The Stoics recognize that while you cannot quell your initial emotional stirrings entirely, you can decide whether to amplify them or diffuse them. Choosing the latter spares you from regretful words and, ironically, impresses those who witness your self-possession. So a third principle emerges: guard your emotions quietly. Let them stir within you, but do not let them drive your outward expression unless they align with reason. That quiet, tempered emotional presence is memorable in a world rife with impulsive displays. Let me share a more contemporary example. I once knew a young executive who had just joined a company known for its aggressive culture. Meetings there could become heated, with voices rising and insults casually flung about. He, however, decided he would not contribute to that noise. Instead, when tension spiked, he would maintain a thoughtful expression, letting others argue. Then, only after the commotion settled, might he offer a concise observation, usually a question that cut to the heart of the matter. Over time, his colleagues came to expect that whenever he finally spoke, it was worth hearing. They grew silent to listen, curious about what insight might emerge from that calm vantage. He told me that this approach, rooted in Stoic restraint, helped him gain respect far more quickly than if he had tried to match the loudness of the office culture. People perceived him as wise, even though he was still learning the ropes. Indeed, his lack of verbal overreach and his consistent composure spoke volumes, forging a lasting impression in the minds of those who initially saw him as an outsider. But we must also examine how Stoicism promotes empathy without words. One might assume that empathy requires vocal expression, offering comforting phrases or carefully chosen sentiments. But sometimes a patient listening presence can convey a deeper empathy than any grand statement. When a friend or colleague shares a trouble, a Stoic approach might be simply to remain fully attentive, letting them see that you are not judging or impatient. You meet their gaze, perhaps place a supportive hand on their shoulder, or simply nod to acknowledge their feelings. This silent compassion can be far more potent than a barrage of consoling words. Our culture often rushes to fix the other person's problems verbally, but Stoicism suggests first absorbing the situation with unwavering presence. By doing so, you show that you respect their experience enough to truly hear it. Then, if words are needed, they can come later, shaped by a genuine understanding. People do not forget that kind of silent empathy. They recall it as a moment of real human connection, a calm harbor in which they felt seen. That is yet another dimension of leaving an impression without speaking, the quiet assurance that you value the other person's reality enough to give it unhurried space. We might consider also how Stoicism teaches the virtue of modesty. Men often try to impress by boasting of their achievements, flaunting possessions, or brandishing credentials. This might secure fleeting attention, but rarely leaves a noble impression. By contrast, a Stoic man, confident in his worth, does not need to trumpet it. He allows results to speak for themselves. He does not downplay his abilities in false humility, but he does not puff them up either. Observers note that he accomplishes much without making a spectacle of it. In that sense, he exemplifies what the ancients might call greatness of soul, magnanimity, tempered by humility. The silent observer sees that he cares more for substance than for display. Over time, that memory sticks. He never boasted, yet he achieved so much. When you exit a room, they remember not your bragging, but your quiet competence and the dignity of your comportment. This yields a fourth principle: let your deeds and consistent virtue shine in place of self-advertisement. Words can be manipulated or misunderstood, but the evidence of your actions, carried out with stoic calm, endures in the recollection of others. Let me paint a scene: a professional awards ceremony. Many attendees seize the microphone to extol their successes, to proclaim how hard they worked. But one recipient, perhaps a Stoic practitioner, simply steps forward, receives the award with a slight bow of gratitude, and returns to his seat, offering only a humble nod to the applause. No flamboyant speech, no self-praise. Strangely, that might leave a sharper impression than any elaborate acceptance speech. The audience sees that he does not crave their adulation. He stands before them as a man content with his work's recognition, but not inflating his ego upon it. Days later, that simple gesture might remain more vivid in people's minds than the prattling speeches they heard. It is reminiscent of how silent, confident humility can overshadow the noisy self-congratulation of others. We cannot neglect posture and presence in social gatherings, where men often feel compelled to fill silence with chatter. The Stoic man can stand or sit in quiet observation, letting the conversation flow around him. He does not appear bored or aloof, but engaged through subtle cues: eye contact, a faint smile, a nod of acknowledgement. He does not attempt to dominate the conversation or prove his wit at every turn. Yet when the group eventually turns to him, he might offer a brief, thoughtful comment that reveals he's been listening carefully. This interplay, moments of active listening punctuated by concise, meaningful contributions, sticks in people's minds. They recall that while others jockeyed for attention, he exuded calm. While others might have repeated themselves or vied to be the funniest, he waited until he had something worthwhile to say. That contrast can imprint itself for days, weeks, even longer. But ironically, the Stoic does not do it for the sake of the impression. He does it because Stoic discipline guides him to speak only when his words are necessary and beneficial. The impression is a byproduct of living in accordance with reasoned restraint. Now, let me reflect on a particularly resonant moment from my own life. I once attended a wedding celebration in which the groom was known for his boisterous personality. During the toasts, a wave of speeches erupted, friends and family cracking jokes, recounting embarrassing stories, soaking in the audience's laughter. Then the bride's grandfather, an old Stoic sort of man, rose from his seat in utter silence. He did not speak. Instead, he lifted his glass, turned to the bride and groom with a warm smile, nodded deeply, and sat back down. A hush fell over the crowd. No one missed his words, for in that silent gesture he conveyed blessings, affection, and a sense of serene approval. People still talked about that silent toast years later. "Remember how Grandpa just stood and nodded?" they would say. "It was so simple, yet it carried such weight." This anecdote shows the potency of Stoic-like minimalism in a context where everyone expects grand speeches. The quiet man, anchored in sincerity, can overshadow a dozen flamboyant orations. One might ask, but how do I foster this silent presence if I am naturally talkative or anxious? The Stoic path does not demand we betray our inherent temperament, only that we refine it with discipline. If you are talkative, you can still speak, but you measure your words, ensuring you do not speak merely out of restlessness or the need to fill silence. If you are anxious, Stoicism offers mental exercises like mindful breathing, recalling impermanence, or focusing on the domain of your control to calm your nerves. Over time, you might discover that you do not need to rely on continuous chatter to be comfortable. Indeed, you might find solace in letting the environment breathe, in letting others speak first. The shift can be gradual. You might start by practicing short intervals of silent observation in social settings, resisting the urge to jump in immediately. Then, as you see the positive effect, how people sometimes gravitate toward you, drawn by your calm aura, you realize that your silence can be a reservoir of strength. Another angle, Stoicism calls for consistency. People form lasting impressions when they observe unwavering behavior over time. If you occasionally attempt to remain silent and composed, but more often lurch into frenetic self-promotion or bursts of temper, your silent episodes might confuse rather than impress. The Stoics remind us that character is shaped by habit. If you yearn to embody a presence that leaves an unspoken mark, you must cultivate these Stoic habits daily, in mundane moments as well as grand occasions. This could mean small acts, refusing to gossip at the water cooler, maintaining calm in traffic or queue lines, or graciously acknowledging a server in a restaurant without flamboyance. Over months and years, these micro moments of Stoic composure accumulate into a persona that others recognize as stable and deep. So a fifth principle emerges. It is not enough to display Stoic silence once in a while. One must live it regularly so that it becomes second nature, seamlessly integrated into all interactions. Let us also consider that leaving an impression without words is not solely about outward Stoicism. It is also about how we observe. Stoics prize attentiveness to reality, not letting illusions or biases cloud our view. When you are silently present with someone, be it a friend, colleague, or stranger, they feel truly seen if you are giving them your full, undivided attention. This can be more potent than any compliment. If you watch them as they speak, genuinely listening, letting your expression reflect empathy or curiosity, they walk away feeling valued. Often, we do not remember the exact words someone said, but we remember how intently they seemed to be listening to us. That intangible sense, "he really paid attention to me," lingers. And in a world where many half listen while glancing at phones or letting their minds wander, the gift of silent, focused attention stands out as remarkable. Thus emerges a sixth principle. Your silent presence is a gift of respect and attentiveness that can mean more than any flurry of speech. We might connect this to Stoic teachings on virtue. Attention, after all, is a form of justice, giving the other person their due as a fellow rational being. By granting them your sincere presence, you affirm their dignity. This act of justice need not be trumpeted with words. It is felt on a deeper level. People recall kindness that was not performed as a performance, but as a quiet, genuine act. Over time, you become known as someone who fosters meaningful interactions, who does not degrade conversations with shallow or self-serving remarks. That reputation alone can precede you into rooms, ensuring that even before you speak, if you speak at all, people sense your presence as a beneficial force. Now, let me pivot to the topic of conflict resolution or tense situations. Often, men believe that to dominate a tense exchange, they must out-argue or out-shout the opponent. Stoicism offers another route. Remain silent longer than your adversary expects. Let them exhaust their venom or their frantic energy. Maintain a calm, listening demeanor. Wait until they have fully expressed their grievances. Only then, once the air is somewhat cleared, do you address the points that warrant a response, briefly, factually, without personal barbs. By not meeting noise with noise, you command the situation from a place of reason. People watching this exchange, or even the adversary themselves, may be taken aback by your refusal to be rattled. They might later reflect that you carried yourself with an unassailable calm, Over time, such experiences form an impression that you are not easily provoked, that you stand on a bedrock of confidence. In short, they see you as a stable point in the swirl of heated emotions. We might place this strategy within the broader Stoic practice of turning adversity into a test of virtue. If conflict arises, Stoicism suggests seeing it as an opportunity to demonstrate patience, composure, and clarity. If you pass that test by restraining reactive words, by choosing a measured silence when beneficial, you emerge stronger in character and more memorable to onlookers. The paradox is that you might win in the deeper sense without hurling rhetorical blows. The silent self-mastery can overshadow your opponent's noisy aggression. But again, from a Stoic vantage, the goal is not to impress for the sake of ego, but to act virtuously. The impression is a side effect of that moral choice. What about the role of personal appearance? While Stoicism emphasizes character over outward adornment, how we dress and groom ourselves also speaks non-verbally. The Stoics cautioned against vanity, but recognized the need for cleanliness and neatness as an expression of self-respect and respect for others. If you appear disheveled or unkempt, people might read that as a lack of self-care or discipline. Conversely, if your attire is simple, tasteful, and consistent with your environment, it can reinforce the impression of a composed individual. We do not obsess over brand labels or extravagance. Stoicism deems such obsessions ephemeral. Instead, we ensure our presentation is coherent with the image of calm seriousness we wish to embody. The silent message, I take myself and my surroundings seriously enough to dress with care, yet I do not chase flamboyance. This nuance can anchor the silent impression you leave behind. Let me bring in a final story to illustrate the convergence of these Stoic principles. In my later years, I attended a leadership seminar featuring a panel of respected figures. Most of them introduced themselves with lengthy resumes, reciting achievements and publications. They sounded impressive, but after a few minutes, one might forget the specifics. Then, a particular panelist simply nodded in acknowledgement of her name, offered a gentle smile, and said almost nothing about her background. When questions arose, she listened intently, her gaze steady. When she did speak, a sentence or two, it was incisive, relevant, and then she would fall silent again, letting others talk. By the day's end, many attendees were buzzing about her, saying, "She's so insightful, so poised." They found her lack of self-promotion refreshing, her quiet confidence disarming. Though she uttered fewer words than anyone on that stage, her memory stood out in people's minds. Days later, I heard participants praising her ability to speak with an economy of words, to exude gravitas. The Stoic lesson was plain. By avoiding the scramble for attention, by focusing on listening, and by speaking concisely when needed, she etched herself into the collective memory more deeply than those who rattled off accolades. This encapsulates the essence of leaving a lasting impression without words. It arises from your silent demonstration of virtue, competence, empathy, and self-possession. You do not chase approval, you quietly exhibit deservingness of respect. You do not overshadow others in conversation, you offer the gift of attention, the restraint of wisdom, and the authenticity of your presence. When you must act, you do so decisively, measuredly. When you must speak, you speak truthfully and sparingly. Over time, people cannot help but notice, though they might not articulate it in Stoic terms. They will sense that you are not pulled by the usual tides of ego or flustered by petty drama. They will recall how your mere bearing or your subtle gestures impacted a room, how you soothed tension or commanded trust without loud claims. That memory, formed largely in silence, endures. As we draw part one of this extended reflection to a close, let us gather the strands of these Stoic insights. We have seen how congruence between inner values and outward demeanor sets the stage for a wordless impact. We have noted the importance of emotional mastery, of letting your actions speak, of showing true empathy through attentive presence, of balancing modesty with genuine skill. We have gleaned how posture, minimal gestures, and even measured slowness can impress upon others that you are a person of depth rather than of shallow display. We have recognized that Stoic living is not a performance but a sincere way of being, and that the impressions we leave behind stem from that sincerity. Indeed, the best impressions are those that are not contrived but are the natural outgrowth of consistent Stoic practice. We might call it the quiet power of self-restraint and moral clarity, a power that resonates in a world that often confuses volume with substance. In the parts to come, we will delve deeper, exploring further Stoic techniques and real-life applications for various contexts: professional, social, familial, or even personal reflection. We will see how the Stoic vantage can guide not just how we carry ourselves in public, but how we cultivate the silent confidence that radiates even when alone. For now, reflect on your recent encounters. Did you fill them with hurried speech, attempting to impress? Or did you find moments where silence, calm observation, or succinct action spoke louder than any words might have? The Stoic path beckons us to expand those moments of silent strength until they become our natural manner. And in so doing, we discover that sometimes, to shape others' perceptions, to linger in their minds, we need only to stand still, watchful, unwavering in principle, allowing our steady presence to do the talking that words so often fail to accomplish. My friends, let us continue our journey into the art of leaving a lasting impression without uttering a single word, guided by the timeless wisdom of Stoicism. In the first part of our exploration, we touched upon how inner alignment, humble competence, and deliberate composure can speak volumes more than any torrent of speech. We reflected on how a quiet yet unmistakable presence emerges naturally when our internal state is calm and focused, grounded in self-awareness and self-possession. Now, in this second part, we shall delve deeper into the practicalities, the subtle techniques, the mindset shifts, and the everyday contexts where a Stoic approach to silent influence can be cultivated and tested. Let us walk further along this path, weaving in stories, reflections, and Stoic principles to illuminate how you might quietly stand out in a world so often dominated by clamor and verbosity. The discipline of self-observation. It is one thing to read about silent composure and quite another to embody it in moments of stress or social tension. The initial challenge we face, indeed the first barrier to leaving a memorable impression without words, is our own internal noise. Thoughts swirl in our heads, anxieties about how we are perceived, urges to fill silence with trivial comments. Stoicism encourages us to adopt the discipline of self-observation, noticing when these impulses arise, naming them for what they are, and gently choosing whether to yield or to let them pass. For example, you might catch yourself in a meeting, noticing a sudden desire to interject with a witty remark or unsolicited opinion. Before giving in, the Stoic approach is to pause and ask, "Why do I feel compelled to speak? Is it to genuinely aid the discussion, or is it my ego seeking validation?" That fractional pause is the hallmark of Stoic practice. If you conclude that your comment does not truly advance the discourse or reflect your deeper values, you might remain silent, letting the meeting proceed. Over time, this consistent self-observation yields a new habit. You speak only when your words serve clarity or virtue, rather than indulging every passing whim. This practice alone can radically alter how others perceive you, for it signals an internal calm, an ability to rise above the reflex of constant commentary. Consider a friend of mine who used to pepper every conversation with puns, jokes, or side remarks. He was good-humored, yes, but he confessed he felt uneasy if there was a lull in conversation. After encountering Stoic teachings, he committed to an experiment. For a month, he would allow silences to stretch a bit longer before filling them, focusing instead on listening or simply observing. At first, he felt awkward, but soon he noticed that others occasionally filled the silence themselves, or that the pause sometimes led to deeper or more reflective exchanges. He also noticed he was less exhausted by social interactions, having conserved energy previously spent conjuring frivolous one-liners. His acquaintances began to remark that he seemed more thoughtful now. Though he had said less, ironically, they found him more substantial. This is the paradox that Stoic silence can unveil. By refraining from trivial words, we can invite greater respect and curiosity. Harnessing the power of eye contact. In Stoic writings, one seldom finds explicit instructions on eye contact, yet the principle of open, steady observation resonates with the Stoic emphasis on presence. When we talk about leaving an impression without speech, eye contact becomes a powerful channel of unspoken communication. People often shy away from meeting another's gaze for too long, fearing it might be interpreted as aggression or intrusion. The Stoic approach is neither to stare down others with hostility nor to avert the eyes in anxiety, but to hold a calm, measured gaze when listening or engaging, conveying both respect and self-assurance. Try an exercise. The next time someone addresses you, give them your full attention by meeting their eyes for the bulk of the conversation. Nod occasionally, letting your expression remain neutral but receptive. Notice how this intensifies the connection even if you say very little. Many men fill silences with filler words like yeah, uh-huh, or right, inadvertently betraying restlessness. Stoicism suggests a different route. Minimize those vocal tics and let your eyes and slight facial shifts show that you are attuned to them. People often find this quietly striking because it is rare. We live in an age of scattered attention, glances stolen by phones or side distractions. Offering someone unwavering eye contact, grounded in Stoic calm, can be disarming in the most positive sense. They may leave the encounter feeling deeply heard and recall your presence long after they forget the specifics of the conversation. Be mindful, though, that cultural norms vary. Some settings might interpret prolonged eye contact as overly intense. Stoicism teaches context awareness. Adapt the length and directness of your gaze to the situation. But the underlying principle remains. Using eye contact as a tool for silent connection and reassurance rather than a vector for intimidation or frantic scanning. This fosters an impression that you are stable, anchored, interested in the other's words. An impression that resonates well beyond the moment. Curating your environment. We often imagine that leaving a silent impression is purely about personal demeanor, but Stoicism also recognizes the interplay between person and environment. If your surroundings are chaotic, people might miss the subtleties of your calm. Consequently, one dimension of Stoic practice is to shape, where possible, the environment that supports or highlights your composed presence. For instance, if you host a meeting, you might choose a setting that allows for comfortable seating and minimal noise distractions. You might ensure that phones are set aside or silenced, encouraging participants to focus fully on the topic at hand. By orchestrating these conditions, you reduce the clutter that compels everyone to speak over one another or to check devices every minute. In that calmer environment, your Stoic posture, listening intently, moving deliberately, will stand out more clearly. It is not manipulative, but strategic, acknowledging that we can guide external factors to align with our Stoic intentions. In personal interactions, you might invite someone for a walk in a quiet park instead of a loud cafe, or suggest a calmer setting for a difficult conversation. This not only fosters a more thoughtful exchange, but also subtly underscores your preference for a measured pace. Then, in that tranquil context, you can practice Stoic silence effectively, letting the environment do part of the work in making each word or gesture more meaningful. People often recall conversations that occurred in peaceful settings, associating the setting with the person who orchestrated it. By curating an environment conducive to Stoic calm, you further amplify the impression left by your minimal yet purposeful manner. Subtle gestures that speak. While Stoicism leans on composure rather than performance, small gestures can indeed convey empathy, encouragement, or acknowledgement without speech. A gentle pat on the back, a brief hand on someone's arm when you sense they need reassurance, or a simple handshake that lingers a fraction longer than usual can leave a tangible imprint of respect and support. The key is sincerity. These gestures, if contrived or forced, feel off. But if they flow naturally from a Stoic posture of kindness and presence, they transmit warmth that surpasses rote phrases like, "I'm sorry for what you're going through," or "I appreciate your efforts." Indeed, sometimes a well-timed touch says, "I'm here," more profoundly than any verbal repetition. In professional environments, of course, one must be sensitive to personal boundaries and cultures. Stoicism teaches us to be mindful, never imposing unwanted contact. The principle, however, stands. An authentic handshake or reassuring pat can serve as a silent testament to your solidarity or gratitude. Consider a leader who awards a commendation to a subordinate not with a long-winded speech, but by handing them a small token, maintaining eye contact, and gently placing a hand on their shoulder. That subordinate may treasure the memory of that silent moment more than they would any elaborate praise. They sense the leader's genuine recognition conveyed in a fleeting, tangible gesture. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day," so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. Navigating conflict without words. We have touched on conflict scenarios in part 1, but let us delve further here, as conflict is often where Stoic silence can be most striking. When emotions escalate, colleagues arguing, family members shouting, the typical male response might be to raise one's voice, to butt in with combative words. Stoicism, though, offers a path of de-escalation. If you find yourself in the midst of heated remarks, you can choose to remain silent for a time, letting the storm pass. If directly attacked, you might respond with a calm expression, a measured nod, or a quiet tilt of the head, indicating that you hear them, but you are not consumed by reactive anger. In those intense moments, your refusal to fling words back can speak volumes about your self-control. Others might initially interpret your silence as acquiescence or confusion, but in time, they see it for what it is, a refusal to feed the flames. Of course, Stoicism does not counsel indefinite silence if injustice or critical misunderstanding arises. Eventually, you may need to articulate your stance, but leading with silent composure, letting others see that you do not revolve around your ego, can shift the dynamic drastically. By the time you do speak, if needed, your concise, calm statements land with more weight than if you had been verbally sparring from the start. This pattern, repeated across various conflicts, can establish you as a figure of stability, someone who does not rashly vent or pander to the chaos around him. That memory lingers in the minds of all who witness it, shaping how they approach you in the future. Standing out in group interactions. Many men worry that Stoic silence will cause them to blend into the background during group events, from office gatherings to community forums. Let us clarify a Stoic remedy. You do not aim to disappear, but to choose your moments of quiet and engagement wisely. In a group context, like a brainstorming session, a Stoic approach might involve listening intently at the start, letting others voice their ideas, even encouraging them with nods or discreet expressions of interest. You gather insights, noticing patterns in the discussion. Only after the initial flurry do you volunteer a short, coherent perspective that possibly unites or synthesizes what has been said. This can have a unifying effect, making you appear as the thoughtful mediator who sees the bigger picture. People remember that. They recall how you neither vied for spotlight from the start, nor remained invisible, but emerged with clarity at a pivotal juncture. That memory outlasts the clutter of all the minor remarks uttered earlier. Additionally, Stoic presence can serve as a stabilizing force in group morale. If tensions rise, your unruffled demeanor can reassure others. They notice you are not panicking, not joining the swirl of negativity. If success is celebrated, you join in modestly, refusing to overshadow the collective achievement with personal boasting. Over time, you become known as someone who is even-handed, present but not overbearing, reliable in crises, moderate in triumph. This balanced persona, combined with your selective but pointed contributions, forms a silent impression. He's the one who consistently grounds the group, even if he doesn't speak often. That fosters a kind of trust that can outlast transient events or rhetorical flourishes. The relevance of adaptability. Stoic silence does not mean unyielding stoicism in every situation. Adaptability remains crucial. If you are in a context where humor or casual chatter is the norm, say a relaxed family barbecue, you need not stand rigidly silent. Stoicism is not about being aloof or humorless, yet the Stoic man can still leave a distinctive impression by the quality of his laughter, the ease of his manner, and the generosity of his listening. He might engage in the banter, but never stoops to cruelty or mindless gossip. He may speak, but rarely for the sake of dominating the conversation. He might help set up or clean up without announcing it. In short, he adapts to the social setting while maintaining the Stoic values of composure, humility, and respect. By blending in outwardly while upholding his internal discipline, he may stand out in more subtle ways, like the man who quietly solves small problems or gently soothes minor tensions in the group. People notice. They sense a deeper steadiness behind his genial participation. Conversely, in solemn or high-pressure scenarios, funerals, serious negotiations, or critical leadership decisions, the Stoic approach might lean more heavily on silence and careful gestures. People often appreciate a figure who refrains from forced positivity or empty reassurances at a funeral, opting instead for respectful presence or a brief nod of condolence. At a negotiation table, the Stoic might let others argue among themselves, stepping in occasionally to anchor the discussion with facts or a single pointed question. The silence becomes a canvas upon which your measured actions paint a lasting image of dignity. This adaptability ensures that you do not become rigidly silent in every situation, but rather calibrate your Stoic approach to the context, always preserving authenticity. Internalizing the Stoic motivation. One vital point: the Stoic quest for a silent, resonant presence is not motivated by vanity, at least it should not be. If your goal is simply to manipulate impressions or to appear superior, you risk violating the Stoic virtue of honesty. Stoicism counsels that we act from the desire to live ethically and rationally, not to chase applause. The lasting impressions we leave become byproducts of that sincere approach. Indeed, people can sense when someone is artificially silent for effect, as opposed to genuinely composed. True Stoic practice emerges from the inside out. If you find yourself calculating, "If I remain silent for X amount of time, I will appear wise," you might slip into inauthentic behavior that eventually reveals itself as contrived. The better approach is to genuinely weigh whether your words serve a purpose or reflect virtue. Over time, that sincerity forms a consistent pattern that people admire, an admiration that endures precisely because it is not contrived. Let me recall a business acquaintance who, after reading about Stoicism, tried to adopt the strong, silent type persona to impress clients. Yet it rang hollow. He would sit awkwardly, gaze darting about, forcing pregnant pauses that felt unnatural. Clients sensed something artificial in his manner, and he came across as evasive or uninterested. He was, ironically, more distant than dignified. Only when he relaxed into a more authentic stance, speaking succinctly but sincerely, did clients warm up to him. He realized Stoic poise cannot be an external veneer. It must flow from a genuine comfort in one's values and decisions. Otherwise, your silent approach might backfire, raising suspicion rather than respect. Stoic silence in teaching and mentorship. We often think that a teacher or mentor must explain, lecture, or impart wisdom verbally. But Stoicism suggests that sometimes the most impactful teaching is done through demonstration and quiet example. If you mentor someone at work, you can show them how to handle stress by your own unspoken calm. When they see you calmly solving a sudden crisis without panic, that memory lodges in their mind more firmly than any pep talk about resilience. If you are guiding a younger colleague in skill building, you might demonstrate the skill step by step, letting them observe your careful gestures, your deliberate pace, your sparing use of commentary. Then, when they attempt it, you quietly stand by, stepping in only when truly necessary. This method fosters independence and respect, reminiscent of how Stoics taught by embodying their philosophy rather than preaching it. In personal mentorship too, like guiding a nephew or a friend's child, your readiness to let them explore, to let them sense your steady support without showering them with constant directives or critiques, can have a profound impact. They recall that you trusted them, believed in their capacity, and made them feel secure simply by being present. Cultivating quiet confidence during achievements. Another scenario often overlooked is the aftermath of personal achievements, whether at work or in your personal projects. In our culture, success is frequently met with celebratory boasting or public show. Stoicism offers a contrarian approach. When you accomplish something significant, you might let the results speak for themselves. Rather than broadcasting your success on every channel, you quietly continue your routine or move on to the next endeavor. Colleagues or peers might discover your achievement in a casual mention or a posted result, and upon asking you about it, you merely confirm, offering humble acknowledgement. This modest acceptance of success can leave a deeper impression than any triumphant announcement. People see that you are not driven by external acclaim. They sense a stability in your pursuits, a quiet pride that does not demand attention. Over time, these unheralded successes accumulate into a reputation for solid, consistent excellence. And that sort of reputation, built on Stoic humility, can be the most enduring of all. The balancing self-awareness with service. Stoicism is not a call for self-absorption. It includes the principle of serving the broader community, acting as a social being. The silent presence we cultivate should thus not revolve solely around self-enhancement, but also around being of value to others. Perhaps you sense a situation where someone is overshadowed or intimidated in a group. By offering them a chance to speak, or by subtly guiding the spotlight onto them, without making a grand gesture of "let me fix this," you demonstrate altruism in a subdued manner. People perceive that you are not merely controlling your words to look dignified, but that you are also using your measured presence to uplift others. This merging of Stoic composure with genuine helpfulness cements an even stronger memory. They recall how you quietly supported someone who needed a voice, or how you resolved a minor issue without fanfare. In Stoic terms, you align your self-mastery with the social virtues of justice and kindness, weaving them seamlessly into your silent approach. Let me give a small personal example. I once witnessed a colleague politely shift his seat in a meeting so that a junior team member who seemed overlooked could be more visible to the group. He didn't comment on his action or announce what he was doing. He simply moved and, by body language, encouraged that team member to present her thoughts. The meeting continued, but that gesture did not go unnoticed. People spoke of it afterward, commending his quiet approach to inclusivity. This is the essence of Stoic practice, integrating moral principle into subtle deeds, leaving an impression that is both respectful and indelible, no words needed to proclaim the deed. Sustaining the practice. Finally, let us address how to sustain these Stoic habits in a society that rewards noise and attention-seeking. The answer lies in the Stoic tradition of daily reflection. Each evening, you can briefly journal or ponder. Did I speak more than necessary today? Did I handle conflicts or tensions with calm presence or yield to impulsive words? Where did I succeed in embodying quiet empathy, measured action, or humility? How did I respond to compliments or criticism? Did I remain composed? By consistently reviewing these questions, you maintain a conscious grip on your Stoic goals. When you detect lapses, perhaps you found yourself bragging or injecting needless commentary, you note it without self-condemnation. You remind yourself that each day is a new opportunity. Over time, these reflections refine your silent presence into a deeply ingrained trait. Your mind learns that Stoic calm is not an occasional performance, but your default mode. The more you internalize it, the more natural and effortless it feels to remain quiet, yet attentive in group settings, to manage your posture and gestures, to let achievements speak for themselves, and to handle adversity or success with the same balanced attitude. And that consistency, as we have said, fosters the most enduring impression, bridging the ephemeral nature of conversation with the timeless aura of character. In sum, Part 2 of our exploration highlights the pragmatic ways Stoic silence can be cultivated across varied contexts. From conflict resolution, group interactions, and personal achievements, to mentorship roles and everyday social gatherings. We have seen how control of environment, posture, eye contact, and measured gestures can enhance the impact of Stoic composure. We have also reaffirmed that authenticity underpins everything. If your quiet bearing is contrived, it eventually rings hollow. True Stoic discipline arises from an inner acceptance of what is and a steadfast alignment with virtue, letting external acclaim or disfavor swirl around you without seizing your center. This orientation, once established, seeps into your daily interactions, ensuring that even your silences are charged with meaning. Others feel your presence as a reassuring constant amid noise. And so, we stand at the threshold of the final part, where we will delve further into how these Stoic habits can shape not just fleeting encounters, but entire relationships and reputations, We will consider how, over a lifetime, a man who quietly practices these principles carves out a legacy of respect and admiration, all without the typical fanfare of self-promotion. Keep these concepts in mind: your measured approach to speech, your steady posture, your readiness to adapt silently to the setting, your self-awareness that identifies when words are necessary and when they are mere indulgence. As you integrate them day by day, you will find that the impression you leave on others, be it in fleeting meetings or sustained relationships, speaks louder and lasts longer than any rousing speech could contrive. That is the silent gift of Stoicism, a testament to the power of living in consonance with one's highest values. My friends, we now enter the culminating stage of our conversation on how one might leave a lasting impression without uttering a single word, guided by the composure, empathy, and moral clarity that Stoicism offers. In our previous discussions, we considered how mindful silence, deliberate gestures, and authentic presence can speak more powerfully than any speech. We delved into practical strategies, self-observation, eye contact, measured handling of conflict, and so forth, and explored how these Stoic habits manifest across personal and professional domains. Now, in this final segment, let us weave these threads into a deeper reflection on the broader implications of living in this manner, the potential pitfalls, and how we might sustain these silent yet striking qualities over a lifetime. For if Stoicism teaches anything, it is that character is not formed by one-off techniques, but by consistent practice that reshapes our way of being. Embracing the bigger picture. Why devote so much effort to cultivating a silent, memorable presence? After all, one could argue that in many modern contexts, loud voices dominate. The Stoic response is that we do not measure success solely by immediate acclaim. Rather, we honor that a life led with integrity and reason, one that exudes calm steadiness, confers a legacy that transcends fleeting popularity. Leaving a lasting impression without words is not about manipulating how others see you. It is about revealing, through consistent Stoic action, your true moral fiber. Over time, people come to trust and respect those who embody such virtues, who demonstrate steadiness in adversity, humility in success, attentiveness in conversation, and civility in conflict. This trust and respect become an enduring memory that outlives the ephemeral noise of more flamboyant personalities. Imagine, for instance, the span of your career or your relationships. Years pass, and countless words are spoken, yet what truly remains in people's hearts and minds? Often, it is not the witty retort or the grand speech, but the distinct feeling that someone consistently showed up with kindness, courage, and composure. Stoic silence underscores these virtues by stripping away the clutter of performance. If your interactions are marked by careful listening, sincere gestures, and calm eyes that reflect genuine engagement, people remember that essence long after they forget what exactly was said. This is the bigger picture. Stoic silence plants seeds of respect that bloom quietly over years, forging reputations that do not rely on constant verbal reinforcement. The role of consistency and follow-through. We noted earlier that if your Stoic-like silence is an occasional performance rather than a reflection of genuine, ongoing discipline, others will eventually see through it. True power in silent presence arises when your outer stillness matches an inner stability cultivated day by day. Suppose you practice these techniques diligently for a few weeks, pausing before speaking, maintaining composed body language, resisting the urge to brag or justify yourself, and indeed you see some positive reactions. If you then relapse into old habits, over-explaining, emotive outbursts, incessant chatter, people realize that your previous calm was superficial. The lasting impression dissolves. Hence, Stoicism urges consistency. One method to ensure such consistency is the Stoic practice of daily reflection. At night, briefly review how you carried yourself in various interactions. Did you maintain that quiet confidence, or did you revert to nervous speech or defensive language? Did you manage conflict with composure or yield to reactive impulses? By calmly noting these successes and lapses, you prime yourself to do better the next day. Over time, what began as a conscious effort becomes second nature. You find yourself automatically pausing before you speak, scanning your emotions with each new situation, and instinctively standing or sitting with balanced posture. This consistent follow-through cements the impression you leave on others, for they witness the same dignified bearing across multiple encounters. Potential pitfalls, isolation, or misinterpretation. We must also be wary of pitfalls that can accompany Stoic silence. One risk is that others might interpret your quiet presence as disinterest, coldness, or aloofness if you never accompany it with kindness or engagement. Stoicism, after all, is not about severing social bonds, but about strengthening them through virtuous interaction. If your silence is overly distant, people might assume you are bored or dismissive. The solution lies in balancing your composed quiet with small but unmistakable signs of warmth, eye contact, a mild smile when appropriate, an occasional nod of understanding, or a brief, supportive touch on the arm if context allows. These subtle cues reassure people that your silence is not born of disdain or boredom, but of thoughtful self-control. In short, Stoic silence should not feel icy, rather it should carry a sense of calm benevolence. Another hazard is that some individuals, threatened by your composure, might attempt to provoke you, to unmask or crack that calm exterior. They might tease, insult, or goad you into a verbal exchange. In such moments, the Stoic approach is to remain unflappable, not stooping to their level of pettiness. That might mean letting an insult pass without comment, or replying with a succinct, non-inflammatory statement if clarity is needed. Sometimes you can simply offer a polite but neutral response. "I appreciate your viewpoint," and move on. Over time, persistent provokers may become frustrated that their efforts to derail you fail. Alternatively, they might grow to respect your unyielding calm. Either way, you preserve your silent composure, which can further strengthen the lasting impression of someone who cannot be easily ruffled. Yet do take care that silence does not become a shield for evading accountability or difficult conversations that genuinely need your input. Stoicism values courage and responsibility. If you must address a mistake you made, or if you must clarify a misunderstanding, do not hide behind silence to avoid those tasks. The silent Stoic man also knows when the moment calls for concise but clear speech to uphold justice or truth. This is not a betrayal of silent presence, but a recognition that we speak when virtue requires. The difference is that we do not ramble defensively, nor do we launch into self-serving monologues. We simply deliver necessary words, standing by them with calm conviction. Broad social and professional benefits. Leading in quiet confidence can yield ripple effects beyond individual relationships. In a team setting, for instance, when colleagues see that you neither scramble for the spotlight nor withhold help or support, they might begin to emulate your example of poised collaboration. They observe your willingness to listen without interrupting, your knack for offering timely assistance without self-congratulation, and they sense a more constructive atmosphere forming. You become a sort of gravitational center, not through force of personality, but through consistent, steady presence. This phenomenon can scale up, Entire offices, families, or communities can benefit from even a few members practicing Stoic silence, reducing needless conflict and emphasizing thoughtful action over empty talk. In leadership roles, silent composure can be especially powerful. A leader who does not rely on grandiose speeches but guides by example, arriving early, working diligently, treating all with respect, can inspire deep loyalty. Team members recall moments when the leader remained calm in crisis, quietly directing resources where needed, never succumbing to panic or hasty accusations. That memory outlasts any motivational pep talk. Over a longer timeline, such leadership fosters trust, which can far surpass the fleeting boost that a charismatic but verbose leader might generate. Indeed, Stoic silence can become a hallmark of stable leadership, ensuring that even if words falter, the leader's presence remains a beacon of order. Integrating family and personal life. Turning to personal spheres, men often worry about how Stoic quietude might intersect with family dynamics, where communication is key. Stoicism does not promote withholding affection or ignoring loved ones' need for dialogue. Instead, it refines how you show care. Instead of cluttering emotional moments with rushed consolations, you offer silent support, letting your partner or child speak their feelings, truly hearing them, and then responding only when you have something heartfelt to add. By doing so, you avoid the trap of fixing their problems prematurely with words, and you convey respect for their process. Over time, family members learn that your silence is not absence, but attentive empathy. In personal life, the Stoic approach might also manifest in how you carry out daily routines at home. You do not boast about chores completed or demand praise. You simply handle responsibilities with quiet diligence. A father who consistently takes care of tasks, cooking meals, tidying spaces, planning family outings, without fuss, leaves a deep impression on children who absorb that calm sense of duty. They see action and care, not lecturing or guilt trips. As they grow, they recall a father whose presence felt stable and unspokenly loving, even in small daily gestures. That legacy endures longer than shouted instructions or constant commentary ever could. In this way, Stoic silence entwines with the Stoic virtue of familial devotion, acting with consistent regard for loved ones' well-being. Observing and learning from others. If you wish to cultivate this Stoic presence, pay attention to those around you who already embody it. They may not call themselves Stoics, but you can sense in them a quiet confidence. Maybe you have a colleague who rarely brags, yet consistently delivers excellent work, or a friend who remains unflustered during emotional turmoil, or a family member whose empathy is felt more than spoken. Observe the nuances. How do they stand? How do they respond to provocation? How do they enter a room? What do they do during social lulls or when tension escalates? By discreetly studying real-life examples, you gather insights on how Stoic silence can manifest in diverse personalities. Emulating them while retaining your authenticity can accelerate your own journey. Additionally, consider reading the lives of historical figures who were known for quiet impact. Some may be Stoic philosophers themselves, while others may simply have practiced Stoic-like virtues. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, governed a vast empire under immense pressure, yet his meditations reveal how he strove for calm reflection rather than constant oration. Or think of certain modern icons, leaders or activists who, rather than shouting slogans, stood in resolute silence, leaving an indelible mark. Their examples reinforce the power of Stoic presence in shaping events and legacies, reminding you that spoken words, though sometimes important, are not the only means of influence. And the enduring aftermath of Stoic silence. One sign that you have successfully integrated Stoic silence is noticing how people speak of you once you are no longer in their presence. Do they recall your calm, or your thoughtful listening, or the dignified way you handle success and setbacks? Chances are they do. Sometimes you discover these impressions indirectly. Perhaps someone mentions that a coworker felt unusually supported by your quiet attention, or that a friend appreciated how you never made a spectacle of your help. The ripples of your silent approach spread quietly, consistent with the Stoic principle of not chasing recognition. Another outcome might be that, during tense or complex moments, others invite you into the conversation, specifically seeking your grounded perspective. They might say, "We'd like to hear from you because you bring a level head to these discussions." That is a measure of trust earned not by flamboyant rhetoric, but by steady, humble demonstration of Stoic calm over time. Moreover, in your personal reflection, you may find yourself less drained by social or professional encounters. By speaking less and listening more, you conserve mental energy. By mastering emotional surges, you avoid the fatigue that arises from anger or frantic back-and-forth arguments. The Stoic posture of silent composure can thus enhance your own well-being. You realize that you do not need to valiantly defend every aspect of your identity with words. Your consistent actions and demeanor prove more effective and less taxing. This internal benefit, greater tranquility, reinforces your commitment to the Stoic path. You continue refining your presence because it aligns with both your outer impact and your inner peace. Future growth. Iterating in the Stoic manner. Stoicism is not static. As you progress, you might refine how you balance silence with the right amount of speech. Early on, you might err on the side of too much silence, missing opportunities to guide or reassure. Later, you may discover that a well-placed sentence at a key juncture can amplify your presence rather than detract from it. Stoicism is flexible. It encourages you to keep testing your approach in various contexts: large gatherings, intimate dialogues, public ceremonies, work crises, family disputes, and note what resonates. If you find, for instance, that your co-workers interpret your silence as aloofness in group brainstorming sessions, you might adjust by offering a succinct idea earlier on, then returning to listening. The Stoic principle is rational adaptation without betraying your core of calm. You remain yourself, unfrantic, but you adapt to ensure that your silence does not become a barrier to collective progress. This iterative process of learning from each scenario ensures that your Stoic silence remains a living practice rather than a rigid rule. Reconciling silence with assertiveness. Men sometimes fear that Stoic silence conflicts with assertiveness, which can be vital in certain roles. But Stoicism clarifies that you can be assertive without being verbose. When necessary, you state your boundary or stance firmly and succinctly. You do not cloak it in lengthy justifications or emotional appeals. This directness can, in fact, be more compelling. For example, if a superior proposes an unethical shortcut, you do not launch into a moral sermon. Instead, you might calmly say, "I'm sorry, but I can't support that approach," and let your silent conviction seal the message. Similarly, if you must negotiate for fair compensation or defend a colleague from unfair criticism, a brief, unyielding articulation of principle can strike deeper than extended debate. Thus, Stoic silence and assertiveness complement each other. Your moral stance emerges plainly, unencumbered by rhetorical flourish. People recall how you stood your ground with minimal words, which can be far more potent than a barrage of arguments. Reflecting on failure when silence falls short. In certain instances, You may reflect that your Stoic silence did not achieve the effect you hoped. Perhaps a misunderstanding escalated because you did not interject soon enough, or your silence appeared indifferent to someone genuinely seeking verbal affirmation. Stoicism invites you not to resent such outcomes, but to learn from them. You might say, "Next time, I will speak a few sentences sooner to clarify or reassure." The point is not to cling to silence as an absolute rule, but to recognize it as a powerful default that must sometimes yield to strategic, purposeful speech. By approaching these lessons humbly, you prevent disappointment from derailing your practice. Rather than concluding Stoic silence failed, you refine your approach, integrating moments of carefully chosen words into your otherwise calm presence. Of the final glimpse of the legacy. As we near the end of this final part, let us cast a long view. Imagine a life well lived under Stoic principles of silent composure. Decades from now, when people speak of you, friends, family, colleagues, what do you hope they say? Perhaps they will mention not that you were the loudest or most talkative figure, but that you carried yourself with a subtle grace. They might recall how you were rarely flustered, how you listened intently, how you offered help without fanfare, how you were unshaken by praise or blame. They might remember how, in disagreements, you never lashed out but remained calm, sometimes responding with a single, measured comment or a quiet gesture. They might praise your consistent humility and the comfort they felt in your presence. And if asked for an example of your wisdom, they might struggle to quote any lengthy speech. Instead, they'd cite a moment of poised silence or a small but resonant action. This is the legacy of Stoic silence. Your essence, rather than your verbiage, becomes imprinted on their hearts. From a Stoic perspective, that imprint is a reflection of your virtue shining through daily conduct. It does not matter if the world lauds it. What matters is that you have lived aligned with reason, justice, temperance, and courage, displaying these qualities in how you move, how you choose to remain silent, how you perform small acts of kindness, and how you face the storms of life without empty theatrics. You become a living demonstration of Stoic serenity, leaving a memory that endures long after speeches are forgotten. That, my friends, is the highest expression of leaving a lasting impression without saying a word. It is not about ignoring the power of language, but about elevating your moral presence so that language, while sometimes useful, becomes secondary to the silent radiance of who you are. Concluding thoughts. In sum, across these three parts, we have explored a comprehensive vision of how Stoic principles can forge a silent yet memorable impression. We have identified the internal discipline needed to master impulses, the external poise that complements it, and the empathy that ensures your silence does not become detachment. We have seen how Stoic composure can resolve conflict, foster trust, and lead quietly in personal and professional arenas. We acknowledged the importance of sincerity, warning against manipulative silence, and emphasized the iterative process of learning to adapt your Stoic bearing to varied contexts. Ultimately, Stoicism is not a performance or a social tactic. It is a way of living, an orientation toward reason, virtue, and inner tranquility. The silence we highlight here flows from that orientation. By speaking less and acting with mindful restraint, you create space for truly meaningful interactions. By declining to chase recognition, you paradoxically invite deeper respect. By remaining patient and composed, you reassure others amidst chaos. And by consistently upholding these qualities, you leave an enduring imprint on those who cross your path, a memory of calm strength that does not depend on words. May these reflections guide you in shaping your own Stoic journey, forging a presence that resonates in quiet strength both within your soul and in the hearts of those around you. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.